like to call this meeting to order. Thank you. So we're just going to do a little rearranging of the schedule. We are going to move the student health survey up. And Craig? Yes, please.
And I have copies of last year's survey for you. I also wanted to say that unfortunately, we moved this up. Mr. Turner asked that we move it up. Unfortunately, Mr. Loomis, who wanted to be here, he doesn't know that, so he's probably going to be coming a little bit later.
That's fine.
But Tony wanted to support the use of this survey again.
So I appreciate you allowing me to go first. I have another meeting that I have to be at that I'm presenting at, so
No,
it was a bit of a conflict. So I'm back for the 2-year cycle of requesting that we administer the survey again in the fall to the general student body at both schools. As you may remember from last year, and if you don't because you're new, you do have the option, and we did this last year, of selecting segments of different questions or a group of questions, which last year we did on kind of family life and the influence of parents directly on their children's behavior. And most of those questions were vetted by the board and included at the request of the board. We're limited by the number of questions that are allowed to be on the test as a total. We can have 99 questions. So if we go over by adding questions, we simply have to remove existing ones. There are several, and I can provide you with that. I think we have them from last year. I don't know that there are any new sets of questions that have been added to that. Those questions all come from the CDC.
Yeah, there's one new question that in seeing Celeste, I saw Celeste last Thursday. She recommended that we do add, which is regarding the opioids and where are the students getting them. So it asks specifically that if you take them, where have you gotten them? So are they yours because you've been, prescribed them? Is it from a family? So that was the one question that she really felt was one that she would highly recommend we add.
Yeah, that would be valuable to the community and the work we're doing as well. Just as kind of a brief recap from the last two administrations of the survey, the first time that we did it really gave us some really good baseline data on areas within student life and student behavior and community behavior that we could address to improve the health, safety, and well-being of kids. That was our focus. Your focus from the development of the survey was to really look at it from a curriculum side and see what could be added to the health curriculum or other aspects of the child's education to improve their ability to be successful as a student. We attempted to rigorously educate the community that this is a community survey about children. It is not a student survey about students. It's not a burden on the school. It's not a reflection of what is or isn't happening. It's a snapshot in time as to what our community is dealing with its adolescent population. And I think we ironed that out pretty effectively after the first one. The second one, I can only speak by the lack of response that I've had or concern in terms of how the community either interpreted or tend to finger point at the board or the education department for basically not doing their job, which was kind of always the concern in the past with doing this type of survey. And I think by and large the community is on board as they see the improvements and the difference in the data. Significant changes happened in a lot of the areas both on the school side and in the community. Specific to our side, we spent a lot of time looking at the driving-related behavior or passenger-related behavior of students in cars, and then began to speak at drivers ed classes where parents were present after that first go-around of the administration. And all of those numbers in the areas that we identified dropped significantly, statistically speaking. We spoke with the coaches and a number of the issues that were involved with coaches, both on the health side and the care side, most notably between both what the school system, what we were doing was looking at head injuries, and even the state began to take a look at that through CIAC very aggressively, so we were kind of ahead of the curve on that one without really knowing it at the time. It was just based on the data driving the decisions about what we needed to do. The one area that remains a challenge on the community side is the mental health side. If you look at those numbers, they were not good for us in terms of either reducing depression or addressing the issue of kids considering or attempting suicide. And I think you'll see both in what we've done this year for how we have channeled dollars differently for mental health services and the increase in that request that will be coming out of our budget to increase those kinds of services to the population, that we're making strides to try to improve the delivery and the availability of those services. I wouldn't begin to speak on what Tony's done, but he and I have talked and certainly have gone back and forth. I know he's rigorously vetted that data and is obviously very committed to using that data to effectively reach the kids, educate not only the coaches that we work with, but the teachers by and large on on the larger issues. I'd like to think it was very successful to look at the data from the first time to the second time, a lot of very positive changes. The only two areas, again, that I saw that needed to be looked at very clearly for us on the community side were the mental health piece and then the relationship aspect. Dating relationships seems to be pretty dangerous, unhealthy. I guess that's a better word to use. I wouldn't say dangerous necessarily, but we need to do a better job of educating both women and men about how to treat people that they're dating, because they do not do a good job based on the information we have in the survey. That's pretty much it. So we're hopeful you'll
So,
support it.
As an administration, we wholeheartedly support this.
There's no cost to the district for us. There's only a small cost at this point because everything is pretty much in place. The major cost is for the actual, what's the word I want to use? Scoring of the sheets, tabulating the data, and the report that we get back. We make the copies of the survey ourselves, so there's no cost for the actual cost of the surveys being administered. And we've been very fortunate to have Celeste George, who's the Department of Health epidemiologist that has handled the survey statewide for years, given above and beyond her time and effort to the community. Her parents actually lived in Wallingford for quite a while. She grew up in Wallingford for a while, so she has a vested interest in kind of taking care of us as well.
Karen?
When can we look at the alternate questions that can be included, and what is the timeline for administration?
So we would like to do it in the fall. We generally do it towards the end of September, beginning of October. Given that there's one new question, it would not be hard to get you copies of all the additional questions if you wanted to go through that. I have them from last year, if that's the only addition.
Celeste was going to be getting us a copy. She said as long as we had back to her the set that we wanted to administer by June, the end of June, the latest, then she said there would be not a problem. So I told her that if she can get us the questions, she was going to share them with Craig too, because we wanted to make sure that if there were things that you further wanted to delve into, that you could make those recommendations. And then we were going to send them to the board, and then if you could just filter those through central office, and we'll get them to her, or to Craig. Well, I'll probably get them and then send them to you,
Yeah, I know that last year we kind of vetted those
the parent.
through the Board of Ed by the end of the school year. So that timeline
Yeah.
sounds exactly the right, because we like
And
to
last
get.
year, the biggest part, as Craig mentioned, was the parent questions.
Yeah, I
that
think we
wanted to
added
ask.
a category of 8 new questions.
Yeah.
7 or 8 new questions that pulled out other. Those were very valuable. So that gave us a baseline, similar to what we did the first time around.
Yeah.
That gave us a baseline. We had no comparative data for those questions. So it'll be interesting to see what effect we've had on influencing parents and how they're managing their children. Those things went to the issue of sleep, nutrition, physical exercise, time with the family, knowing where they are, knowing who they're with, knowing what they're doing, those sorts of things.
Roxanne?
Yeah, thanks. Just a couple quick questions. Just really more for TV than anything, Craig. Could you refresh us as far as what class this would be administered through? Do we know that?
Well,
Or-
it's to all students throughout the
Right.
high school, and then in terms, we go to the administration, they end up working with the teachers.
Okay.
In terms of coming up with their schedule.
And I know it's voluntary. What typically percentage do we get students that participate?
Oh
Do
my
we know
gosh.
About?
Over 90,
Okay, so that's.
89 to 90.
Okay. And then when new questions are provided to consider, will we also be given the ones that would be considered to be removed?
Well, you would have to choose, because you'd have to trade out.
Right.
So
That's
the-
good.
That's what I'm saying.
So the questions the document that I passed out is what was actually given this past time.
I
So
understand.
then we'll give you the new questions,
Right.
and then we'll
Right.
have to have a conversation. If there are questions that the board wants to bring forward as new questions, then at a meeting like this, we would just negotiate
Okay, that's fine. I didn't know if you would come also with suggestions of, if you wanted, say, to recommend 3 or 4 new ones.
I had asked Celeste that question about what ones might she want to swap out, and she
Right.
said there was only the one question that was going to be added, and then she would take a look at it and give us some recommendations.
Yeah,
based
because
on the data.
I think that's where I'm going with this. I wouldn't know what questions
Yeah.
to consider to remove, and I would want to make sure that if we make those types of changes, that we're hitting something that might be a duplicate or didn't, isn't
It didn't
a
garner, it's not
critical
getting us
issue for us.
the information that we need. I think
Right.
and that's what she was looking at.
Okay, all right,
Yeah,
thank
so-
you.
Yeah, that was a good question, though, because it wasn't, you also looked and considered in terms of adding questions and removing them. That was part of the process that the board went through, but it was largely done through the recommendations or direction of Celeste, because from the state's perspective, some of the questions no longer even have
Yes.
the value to the state that they
Right.
used to have because of the scoring.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep.
So we'll get this on so we'll get follow-up from you folks.
Yeah, I'm
once
going to get,
you get all that.
she's going to send us some additional information.
Okay.
We'll make sure that we're all in coordination.
Perfect, thank you.
So tonight's agenda asks for possible action. Do you want us to take action now
Well,
or
it's
wait till the
consens.
question?
It's consensus.
Consensus tonight?
So
Okay.
just so we can move forward, just so that we know that we have the approval, and then it'll be just to finalize the survey.
So approval to do the survey,
Yeah,
and then
just because we wanna
finalize.
give-
And then
we
we'll
wanna make
finalize
sure
the
that-
questions. That's what I wanted
Because
to check.
Craig is still kind enough through youth services to help fund this. We want to make sure that he had that information tonight.
That's
and
fair.
we can finalize the questions.
So just to clarify your question about the percentage of kids, so the largest number of kids that don't participate are ones that aren't in school that day, either from a field trip or from illness or some other issue. It's not kids opting out. That's
Yeah.
actually a
Oh, that's a
small,
really important point.
that's actually a smaller percentage
So-
than you would think.
Would that actually, let's go with that scenario, would there be an opportunity to, I call it a different word, but a makeup day? So for some reason, whether you were absent because of a school trip, or you were ill that day, or whatever, but still were interested in taking it, even if it's like 3 days later, or is that prohibitive?
So I know
From-
from Celeste's perspective that from a scientific evaluation of the
Oh,
data, we want it to be clean. Everybody
Got it.
takes it at the same time,
Okay,
same
fair enough.
instructions, same opportunity.
And also, I didn't know I didn't mean to put a burden on the schools either, if that would be the case, but fair enough. So it's one shot, and that's it.
Right.
Any other questions? No? All right, consensus. We'll start with Roxanne.
Yes.
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 And yes.
Thank you very much. Have a
Thank
good night.
you.
Have a good night.
So now it's consensus on the Operations Committee meeting minutes from March 13th, 2017. Roxanne?
Yes.
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 And yes. Cafeteria financial report.
Yeah, as you can see, as of the end of March, without their Board of Ed assistance, our loss is $4,068.21. If you look at the difference between the income and the expense, it's $30.59 a day. That's, so if you take the 47 days that are left, if that all came out, our additional loss would be $1,437, or a total loss for the year would be $5,505. Just to let you know that April is a shorter month, May is a long month, and June is a short month coming up. If that ended up, our balance for the end of this year would be $153,041. That's $119,000 that we still have and haven't used, and the difference between the loss and the $38,000 is $33,219, for a total of $153,041 if the balance of everything worked out. Moving forward to next year, if we took those numbers that we have about the income and expense, and if everything stayed the same, we just increased our expenses by 2.5%, leaving our income flat as we have it, the loss would be about $46,000 if nothing changed. If that occurred, our balance at the end of 17-18 would be about $107,000. So I just want to update you on those. Also, just let you know, I want to thank Alan and the ladies They had a booth at the health fair, I don't know if anybody saw it, but they have veggies, people ate the veggies.
That's right.
The punch was not spiked, just to let you know, it was regular punch. We did have strawberries, I don't know where you got the strawberries from.
They were outstanding.
They were.
They were locally grown, right?
And then we had cookies, whole grain cookies.
51% whole grain.
Okay,
correct.
and then Alan and the ladies had books to give
A lot
out.
of, like Connecticut grown things for little children, little reading material. It was very well attended. We enjoyed doing the booth. Great cooperation with Anthony too. He really has a lot of spark in these health fairs, and it went well.
I want to thank the ladies, some of them are here, who were mom.
Passing out the stuff.
Yeah, passing out, very good. So, anything else? And
No, well,
that's-
the only thing I like to add, and Ed and I, we discuss a lot of things, and he's very helpful, and I'm glad he's staying on. Oh, I'm sorry. The thing is, we also lost 3 days in March, and if we had those 3 days in March, that would just add to the income, because we already had the services of the ladies here, and we had the food. We're getting excited about these ending months because we're getting close to farm fresh products. I'm gonna be bringing in some local farmers to see what can be available at a reasonable price for students. As we know, there's just more than one variety of apples than McIntosh, and I know some of these farmers, we could probably get a pretty good deal where they could deliver fresh to our schools. Hopefully, near the end of the year, we might be able to get some pears too. And also, sometimes peaches are out early. But Connecticut has one of those weird growing seasons, so it's tough to get fresh stuff. But in September, if we're still here, I intend to use farm fresh. Now, farm fresh means it's gonna be local, and it's not going to, I mean, it's locally fresh and not farm fresh, because there's a big difference between the two. USDA definition of farm fresh is 500 miles radius. Locally grown is within a 20 or 30 mile radius, and we have in Cheshire and in Wallingford farms that I will be contacting. We're excited about a couple new items. My ladies attended a food show with me, and we're gonna have, we can't name companies, but there was a hamburger out there that we're gonna call it a McW. So if you can understand what I'm trying to say, because it tastes exactly like the other one that you can buy down the street with the arches. And we're gonna have a carnival pizza. And it's not fried, but it's baked, and it's made with 51% whole grain, and I'm sure the children will enjoy it. And that also brings me up to the point of, we are serving pizza every day. It's keeping our sales constant every day. So in other words, when we do have the offering of pizza, the children do have it. So basically about the food and about the financials, that's about it, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions? Consensus on the cafeteria report?
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, financial report.
Just going over each item. First item is the contingency. As you can see, we haven't changed it since October. Those are the items that are listed below. Just to let you know, the athletic equipment for Lyman High School, they're all in, they're using it, and
Tracking tomorrow,
yeah, it's all in, so it's really nice. We also just sent out a bid for the, at Lyman Hall, the boards, I can't think.
auditorium lighting.
No, outside, the scoreboard, sorry. Boom. So that's out, and it'll be due on May 8th. That's the, getting rid of the two scoreboards that are back-to-back. One is for the softball and one's for the football and lacrosse and so forth. So that'll be in on May 8th. Going number 2 item, the benefits. Benefits increased just slightly. We're still seeing, and I think that's gonna hold for the rest of the 2 months that are left. So that's a good item. Number 3, tuition. We've increased that. We've hit, unfortunately, we're over the $1 million mark, $1,038,000 in special ed tuition. And also, remember, magnet school tuition is in there. So magnet school regular tuition and magnet school special ed tuition is a total of $517,000. So that's what we're spending on the magnet school.
And if I could just comment to the board, just an FYI, because I just wanted to bring, because this number is not, we're not usually annually in this kind of a deficit. Just since July, we are responsible for unanticipated students who moved to district whose tuition costs are in the ballpark of $525,000. So that's just a large figure that when we planned and projected our budget last year for this year, we didn't know these students were gonna be coming in, so.
Do you guys know off the top of your head what we budgeted last year for tuitions? I just want to, we're $1 million over some number, and my brain,
I don't have it here. Okay. Last year, total tuition with the excess cost, this is what we spent in 13-14, $3,062,000, 14-15, $3,217,000, 15-16, $3,004,000, 16-17, the budget was $3,005,000, we're gonna spend $4,005,000.
Yep.
okay.
Yeah.
And also remember that the threshold increased from $69,000 per student to
To
$75,000.
$75,000.
Yeah, so.
And that
And the
happened
rate of
in
reimbursement.
that happened in October.
Yeah, and
So
I-
we had to make up that $350,000 or $335,000 in October. And then we had the additional tuitions. The other thing that, one of the data points that I shared, and it's in our presentation for the town council that we'll be doing up on the 27th, is the fact that over the same course of time, while we've increased special ed over $4 million since 2008 to now, we've only received a little over $500,000 more from the state of Connecticut. So the cost has just gone up astronomically, and the reimbursement from the state has gone up so insignificantly.
Well, it's stayed
It's
the
gone
same.
down, it's gone down.
Just give you a quick, 13-14, we got 1.9, 14-15, 1.8,
Yeah.
15-16, 1.8, and this year, 1.8, so.
Yeah, there was an uptick in the 2008, 9, 9, 10, and then it just crashed.
Yeah, because of the raise in the,
The per pupil expenditure.
and
Yeah.
the reduction in how much we, it goes from 100% down to 73%.
I wanted to make sure it's important to see that we didn't we did, because we spent more, or we had more expenses, but we had such a consistent number for so many
Right.
years that was unforeseen. You couldn't see it going up that much.
No, and
So I
like
just-
to Rob's point,
Yeah.
when you have students who come after July 1st,
Mhm.
you can't, and you can't really predict that. The other challenge, and the board was well aware because you took a vote in the fall to provide additional funds for mental health and for social and emotional development of students. As was mentioned by Craig, the survey shows that. So we added additional behavior techs and also some BCBH individuals working with our staff. So it's been really a challenge. And I think the data I shared, and I believe, if I remember correctly, that of the students, the new enrollees, as of December, I think it was like 12th, we picked a date, there were 45 new students to our school district, and over 80% of them, or 75% of them, had come to us with special ed needs or 504 needs. So it's really, it's great that we're able to provide, but it has been challenging for us to budget.
Karen?
Could you get back to me with how many are state agency placements? Thank you.
There's not that many, there's maybe 4 or 5, that's it.
Sometimes those can be quite costly.
Yeah. But we get, with a regular special ed we place, it's 4.5 times. There, it's 1.5 times, so we get more money for the DCF student.
But I'm curious to see exactly what the demographics indicate to us.
I will get that to you. We don't have as many state agency placements this year as we've had in the past,
Okay,
but I'll get that to you.
okay, thank you.
Next one is transportation. As you can see, we're still in the surplus in transportation, and mainly because combining the routes, the out-of-district routes and the in-district routes, we're still saving about $317,000. Salaries, as you can see, we're in a surplus of about $115,000. Certified salaries are in a deficit, about $37,000. The majority of that is substitutes. As I said last time, in 14-15, we spent approximately $547,000. 15-16, about $510,000, and we're projecting that we may spend $581,000 this year in substitutes. And we're going over that, with Carrie and I are going over that to look at that. So that's the main problem, is that. The non-certified, we're about $153,000 in the surplus. All the contracts, one still has to be approved by the city council, and we'll all be in, that'll stay constant. After this, there's other areas that we're gonna be increasing that are not listed here as a total of $281,000. I'll give you that after. The next one is unemployment, still saying the same, about $180,000. And we're projecting Medicare and Social Security is about $17,000, still a little higher than last month. Plant maintenance is staying about $30,000. Just want to go over plant maintenance. Last time I gave you some figures. I just want to update those figures and let you know we're still in the gas that we have in the schools. We're going to be in deficit about $80,000. Number 2 oil, we're about the same. We will not be in deficit. Electricity, we're going to have a surplus of about $131,000, and in the water and sewer, probably a surplus of $9,800, which brings our total surplus about $61,000. So that may be an additional $30,000 that we have in there. Once we finalize this month with all of the fuel oil, number 2 oil, we'll know better. Also, there's about another $90,000 in salaries to finalize, and the waivers saving, that's $90,000. And then, as you know, in March 17th, we stopped purchasing, and the PO stopped only for emergencies that we approve, and hopefully we'll have another about $150,000 savings in that. So all 3 items could equal another $270,000, which would come up to almost $500,000 surplus this year.
Questions? No? Consensus?
Yes.
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 Yes. Item number 4, discussion and possible action on the proposed name of Lyman Hall High School Counseling Suite to Anthony F.
Rotolo.
Thank you, Rotolo, Student Services Center.
Yes, and Mr. Bryant is here to share a little of information for the board on this particular topic. So I'll invite Mr. Bryant.
So I know you have a letter in your packet from the faculty at Lyman Hall, signed by, I think, 65 staff members out of a staff of about 120 people total. Tony was an exceptional teacher, principal, friend, mentor. In my mind, the finest educator I've met in my 36 years in education. And we're asking that the board consider naming the Student Services Center in his honor. Tony served from Lyman Hall from 1961 to 1996 as a teacher, assistant principal, and principal. Came back and did a couple tours as a substitute principal and teacher after he retired. And probably inspired scores of teachers in this district to enter the profession. So we're asking you to give this in consideration. I know he had a tremendous influence on me and on Mrs. Lavalette as well, and on Jennifer, and on countless other people in the district. So we ask your consideration.
Questions? No? Oh, sure.
Mr. Rotolo was my senior English teacher.
Can you just go to the mic, sorry?
Karen Ripa.
You can move it.
My name's Karen Ripa. Just very briefly, Mr. Rotolo was my senior English teacher at Lyman Hall, and when you look back, every student looks back on their teachers and says that teacher was one of my favorites, and Mr. Rotolo was that teacher for me. He was most inspiring and taught me so much. That would be such an honor to have something named after him.
Thank you. Yes.
I just want to say, when I opened my packet this weekend and saw this, it was this was a no-brainer for me, and I'm thrilled to see that the recognition that we're going to give to Mr. Rotolo hopefully tonight. I fully support this.
So from a logistics standpoint, I'll be the practical one. What's involved for Lyman Hall for the naming if we go forward with this? It's a plaque, obviously. Any
We'd,
other
most likely, we'd
implications?
work with building administration, the family, to determine a date that would
Sure.
make the best sense, the most sense, and then we would invite, the
Of
staff
course.
to be there, board members. It doesn't require anything under the action of the town council because it's inside our building.
Thank you for
So,
that.
I just wanted to make sure that that was for TV Land also.
Thank you.
And that was similar to the Patricia Crowley Media Center
Right.
scenario that the board had approved earlier this year. So right now, basically, if the board were to take consensus on this, this would go to the board meeting next Monday under the consent agenda, and then the wheels would be in motion to actually plan the event, plan the opportunity, and make sure that we got the plaque, appropriate recognition.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? No? Okay, consensus, Roxanne?
Yes.
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 And yes. Okay, item number 5, discussion and possible action on the 2017-2018 Healthy Food Certification Statement Addendum to Agreement for Child Nutrition Programs. Wow, that was a mouthful.
Alan, if you'd want to take it over, this is our second time doing this.
Correct. The only thing that happened this year, they changed the format for the approval of this HFC program. And what the board has to do is take a vote on it, and I guess tonight here you'll make a consensus and then bring it for a full vote. I believe a consensus would be enough for consideration 1 and for consideration 2. Consideration 1 is certifying that the director in charge and the department will comply with all the rules and regulations of the healthy foods and the beverage laws in the state of Connecticut, which we have this year. And consideration 2 is that you're going to exempt any event, and an event would be such as a baseball game, a football game, tennis match, where you're allowed to sell things that don't comply. And once the board gives us that consensus, the new way of doing it is that I will take a copy of that, and then I will go into what is known as the collar system with the State Department, which I have authorization to do, and I will recertify us. The dollar amount involved is approximately $37,000 because we get 10 cents for each meal that we serve from the state for complying with these laws, and approximately 75, I believe it's about 75% of all the schools in the state of Connecticut do comply with this. So I'm asking for the board's consensus. Thank you.
Questions or comments? No? Okay. Consensus?
Yes.
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 And yes.
Thank you.
Okay, discussion and possible action on timeline for calculating class rank at high schools. Dr.
Yes,
Menzo?
this came up at our recent high school administrators meetings. There had been some discussion about the importance of reviewing this topic, and I'm going to invite both Ms. Duthie and Mr. Corso to come to the mic and share a little bit of the background information that's in your packet to give you some of that background and make sure that you clearly understand what we're doing to make sure that we're doing what's right for the students.
All right, good evening. Thanks for having us. So what we're recommending, you have it in your packet there, but very quickly the shift will happen. We will move to calculating the college class rank at the end of 6 semesters. What we use that for is our college scholarship process and college entrance process, as well as 2 large UConn scholarships that each school receives. And then for our varsity scholars, we will calculate the final rank out 8 semesters, which would be the end of senior year.
So is that a departure? I'm sorry.
It's, right now, it's
Confused.
currently done differently at both high schools, and we're looking to be consistent.
Oh, okay. So
across.
is that the purpose here is
Yes.
so that we're doing
So,
it the same way?
We've
Okay.
identified that
Really?
we've been.
We don't calculate it the same on either side? Jen?
We calculate the rank the same. We end ours currently right now at Lyman Hall at the end of 6 semesters, which is the end of our junior year, is our final class rank, and Sheehan ends it at the end of 8 semesters. So we're looking to get consistency across town.
So the difference is that the challenge is that there's two pieces to this, as you could see, that there's, first of all, the class rank that, follows a student through the whole 4 years. But then for the purposes of some scholarships, we do have to make a decision earlier. So that's where the administration had a long conversation and came to consensus that they needed to kind of press pause on one aspect of this at the six semesters. And then, proceed forward, knowing that obviously as it continues to be calculated that there's some things that occur that the student might not be part of. But
Correct.
the fact is we don't want the student to give up trying until the end of their 8 semesters. And we don't want to just arbitrarily say, okay, no more opportunity.
Yeah.
So we had a very thoughtful conversation. The whole all the administrators from the high school were there, as well as our curriculum coordinators, of course, us. A very, very thorough conversation on it. And just, again, it's difficult because the UConn scholarship in particular keeps coming up that they have to know at a certain point, and you can't change that. So,
And the entire college application process happens early on, so the end of the junior year is really when that's important for the application process.
Well, that I understand, but that means that your entire senior year doesn't count towards class rank, if I'm understanding this correctly.
It wouldn't count towards the class rank reported out to colleges. It would count towards our varsity scholars, which GPA would continue to be calculated. It just wouldn't affect class rank. Obviously, along with many schools, we'll eventually be looking at possibly move past class rank, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, because at some point, I do appreciate, you gotta cut it off, Shauna, think about it.
Oh, no.
But, I mean, I'm not sure what the magic, date
Well,
is,
if it
but.
I
makes-
understand the college thing, right?
Right.
I get applications
Yeah.
every way junior year. I mean, I was there. I guess my thing is that now, so let's say I'm a junior and I'm
Yeah.
valedictorian and I slack off all of senior year. Not
Yeah.
that the valedictorian would do that. But let's
Yeah.
just say that happens. I'm still the valedictorian at the end of senior year, even if I have a D average or whatever it is.
And just to clarify, we don't actually recognize valedictorian and salutatorian in
I
district.
was using it as just like an
Yeah,
example
okay.
for, I guess it was just lost.
well, no,
Okay,
and
but
that was part of the challenge of the conversation. I think that we saw both sides of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The challenge that you have, again, with the college piece is that it does kind of need to freeze in time, but we also didn't want to lose, and because there was discussion just doing everything at 6 semesters
Uh-huh.
and just calling it a day. But the fact was then you kind of shut the child off from the 7th and 8th semester
Yeah.
Yeah.
where they
That's your
could
point.
potentially work and gain some ground in terms of being a varsity scholar.
Or take some
Um,
really difficult, they may take more AP courses as, they progress in their high school career. So senior year would be a year that you could see, some kids might be the first time they take AP courses, for example, or take more.
Well, and if you
Just-
notice in there, some of the timeline issues that we dealt with at the meeting, we're giving students enough time to actually make the correct choices for their classes, knowing when rank would be calculated. We didn't want
Yeah,
to start it
That's a
next
good
year
point.
and have the junior class that's already requested their classes not be able to make those decisions
good point.
based around that. So that's where the timeline comes into play.
Yes.
Do you know of colleges, because I know a number of years ago when I was teaching up in West Hartford, that some colleges would actually ask for like 3rd, 4th quarter senior grades?
Yeah, I mean, most of them.
I used to tell my seniors and say, you were accepted at University A, but don't slack off now because they can put you on a waiting list.
Most of the colleges that are really difficult to get into and have extremely high standards will re-look at the grades and have the students report it back out.
So that'll keep them honest.
But as it was mentioned, I mean, most of those kids don't.
Oh, yeah.
They don't. They wouldn't be there if they were the slacking type. So that we were less concerned about that, but we really didn't want students choosing courses just to calculate out a rank. We want them to choose what best fits for them and will lead them to the most success. So we also polled the surrounding districts, both in our DIRG and the SEC, and other schools to see where they fall, and made a decision based on kind of what we see across the board.
Ms. Duffy, that's how you feel as well?
Yes, this was something that we discovered recently in speaking, Joe and myself, that Lyman Hall had departed from the standard practice. So basically, the procedure that you have in front of you is how Sheehan will transition to catch up to where Lyman Hall currently is. Lyman Hall will maintain their practice. So beginning with our current sophomores, they'll be the ones that will get the 6 semester rank.
Karen?
Could you give us a little explanation on the change in the GPA from 3.7 to 3.9? Did that have something to do with the weighting of the AP courses?
That came about, Karen, you may not have been a member of the board at the time, but going back about 6 or 7 years, we changed the varsity scholar status to reflect the new and current GPA scale.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Um,
I'll answer.
So, that's okay, it's all good. So, actually, this change affects Sheehan, if I understand it correctly, really affects Sheehan more than Lyman Hall,
Yeah, I
right?
guess.
Is that a fair statement, or?
Joe,
I
I
mean-
think Joe discovered that about 4 years ago, Lyman switched.
Okay,
Yes, it seemed to
is
have
that what
been
it
an
was?
arbitrary switch at the time. Really what brought it about was some very concerned parents of mine who were unclear of when it happened. So of course I went to the handbook, which for us it's written in there, but I also called Rosemary to say, hey, I just want to make sure that I'm saying this accurately, and then that's when we figured out that
Yeah.
we're not the same. And we
Gotcha.
do understand the importance, especially for big
Right.
ticket items like that, being consistent across town.
Right, that makes sense. So, from a communication standpoint, what takes place at this point?
And what we talked about is coming up with a communication plan for parents and students. So that
Right.
as soon as we get the process through and voted on, we'll begin the process in dealing with families and students to talk about the shift and the change. And Dr. Menzo and both of us talked about that process and what it looks like and how to make sure everyone is well-informed going forward, so everyone is very informed as to when that date will be.
Right, that's my concern. I just want to make sure that we communicate in a variety of means so
Absolutely.
that, whatever works for some families may not work for another in terms of how they receive communications. So if this gets approved, are we looking to institute this for September? Is that the idea, or?
No.
Well, yes and no.
Oh, okay.
Yes and no.
Okay,
You would begin to advertise now.
okay,
So basic premise, email blast, newsletters, website.
Sure.
Guidance counselors and the like. It would be placed in our student handbook, which would be distributed at the start of the fall for the 17-18 school year. And then it goes into effect, so to speak, then. So
okay.
Lyman Hall is basically no change at the present time. For the varsity scholar change is implemented for the class of 2018, the 3.9 requirement. And then for the class of 2019,
Yes.
2019 at Sheehan, it would be the 6 semester rank.
Okay, I kind of get that.
Well, the 2017-18, there was really, that timeline hasn't changed.
Yeah.
We're just restating it because it was already supposed to take effect. For the varsity scholar change was supposed to take effect that year. So we're
Okay.
just really restating that.
Gotcha.
So the only change starts with the class
Is-
of 2019, the 6th
The
semester.
6 semester piece.
And that was deliberate because some kids have already signed up for their courses.
Right,
and
but you made
so
that
that
point,
whole-
Joe.
yeah.
Right, I appreciate it. Okay, thanks. Thank you, Rosemary.
Questions? No? Okay, consensus?
Yes.
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 Yes. And yes. Fun part,
All
budget
right,
update.
the last thing, there
You
should
know
have,
what? I think we ran out of paper, sheets. We stopped here
Stuffed it, yeah.
at Karen, so I don't know. Sorry. We need 4
well, no,
more
I
maybe?
have plenty.
Oh, you do?
Yep.
Okay, so you're gonna need 2 more there and then 2 for your staff members.
Now we get to the meat of the meeting.
So what I have in front of you is central office has obviously been working since we received the mayor's number to come up with a plan to help get us closer to that $700,000, well, over $1 million deficit. So what you see before you are the first several items you'll notice are the area of the budget, our strategic plan items. So it probably comes to no surprise to anyone that the items that were recommended in the strategic plan would no longer be moving forward. So that leaves us with a difference of approximately $660,048. What we're recommending is that we do not put aside a cafeteria subsidy of $80,000 because, as you heard tonight, if we were to stay in-house, the deficit would be less. Plus, we have a surplus, technically, or unencumbered fund balance in cafeteria of about approximately $150,000. So to put aside $80,000 on top of that, it doesn't seem like it'd be necessary. Plus, when we went out to bid, we did put in the contract that it would be the bid would be for profit. So it wouldn't be a break even, so we'd be requiring a profit. So we believe that we shouldn't have to put $80,000 in the budget for that. You'll notice that we also have 4 teacher positions. That's just because of enrollment, and we've all heard this story before, so it's, you know, the first verse is the same as the second, in the sense that, you know, we know that there's enrollment decreases, so this is not due to any program changes or getting rid of anything. This is just a matter of shifting population. And predominantly, there's an elementary position. There's a position that we didn't fill this year, so we're not going to fill. We didn't need it, so we're not filling it next year. And then we're looking at 2 high school positions at this point. But again, that has to be broken out based on scheduling, and we've been working very closely with building administration. So we'll be looking at which classes. I can't say which classes. I can't say which sections. We're not there yet, but we believe that there is a potential for at least 2 class teacher reductions at the high school level.
I mean, are you talking layoffs?
It could be.
All right.
It could be. It depends on where it falls out. It depends on the sections. We can't keep teachers to teach 8 kids or 5 kids. I know as a taxpayer you wouldn't probably be able to support that, so we couldn't support that as a central office.
So Sal, just to clarify, you're saying 2 high school and first I heard
Potentially
1 elementary.
One
so-
elementary,
And then the other
one
one-
middle school position that
okay,
was at
that's
the
what I was
middle
missing.
school alternative program, which we didn't end up filling, and then potentially 2 high school. It could
Got
be, it could be more, it could be less, but we believe that we're confident that we could reduce 4 teaching positions due to enrollment decrease
Thank you.
and shifts. And that's why I just put it as a staffing decrease, but I just, again, in full transparency, the administration is still looking at that across both schools.
So that wouldn't change necessarily class sizes. We're still
No, class-
maintaining.
Excuse me?
We're still maintaining our.
Yes, the elementary class sizes we're still maintaining. Middle school class sizes, you are adding a teacher, quote unquote, per school to help mitigate the 8th grade bubble. So that's still in the budget. That's not being changed. And high school class sizes will, Cindy, you were working on this more closely in terms of numbers. They range no more than,
They range from, I would say, there are a few where there's sections, for example, of an AP class where you would let it run with, say, 10, 12 students. But most of the classes we're looking at running, I would say, between 17 and 26 tops.
Okay.
so again, the class sizes, we're maintaining a good class size since we had middle school classes for the last 2 years at 26 and 27. That we're finally mitigating this year. So we feel that that's appropriate.
So one more. I
Sure.
know we just closed negotiations on all these contracts, but when I look at, and I have to say, nobody really took an extreme increase in salary at the top of the pay scale. They really didn't. I'm not saying anything like that, but I do think that what we have going on is unsustainable, and I don't know if now's the time to start having those conversations. But when you look at how much our budget goes up every year, it really does almost equate directly out to salary increases. And that's just something that, unless we're gonna start laying people off and changing class sizes and, decreasing staff, that's the reality we're dealing with. And I don't know if it's
Well-
premature to start having those conversations, but I think we really need to start considering.
No, I don't disagree. I think, though, the thing is that we can't, and I know that, for example, I know, Pat, you were just recently on the Mike Burdinsky show, and I believe there was probably some questions about class size and why does the enrollment decrease and we don't decrease the same number of staff, or why don't we do that? So we have a responsibility. So I don't want, this is not where we're cutting programming. This is just the natural circumstances and consequences of a decreasing population in our district. So, I mean, we can't protect that.
Yeah.
So it's not about we're laying off staff. I want to make that very clear. We're not cutting programs. We're not recommending the cutting of any program. We're not looking to reduce services for students. This is just a natural outcome of just a declining population that we've done every year. The thing that we are going to look forward to, and I think that this is something that I know I've shared in various Monday messages to staff as well as also to the board members, and I'll say it again here tonight. I'll probably say it at the next 2 meetings at the town council. We have to look at how we run our 2 high schools. If we're going to have 2 high schools, we have to run them as close to being 1 high school as possible. So that's going to take a lot of community conversation, and we're looking to engage in that this summer. My most recent Monday message said, once we get past this budget, don't be surprised, we're going to start talking immediately about looking at those practices a little differently. And one of the key things, which unfortunately the principal's left, but one of the key things is we do have a business opportunity. We have a business position. There's a retirement at Sheehan High School. We are looking to figure out how to keep the business courses available for students who are in the upper level classes this year, but begin to phase potentially that position over to Lyman Hall and have business just be a Lyman Hall opportunity and not be offered at both high schools. Because I don't think we're not in an environment that will allow us to replicate programs the way we used to. So that is one example that the administration
So how would that play out for students?
Well, the thing is that what would happen is, for example, there are courses, there's very few courses at Sheehan that are prerequisites to each other for business. We looked at that just recently, over a week ago. And so what we do is we've looked at course selection for students who are upperclassmen. And so what we're looking to do is making sure that we run those classes and then seeing if there's extra classes that wouldn't be filled by that person to start building the rest of the program over at Lyman Hall. So potentially a split staff member for next year.
So would potentially students be going back and forth between the
No,
two?
so then the
How would that
next
work?
phase of that,
I'm
next
sorry,
year.
I didn't
Yeah,
mean to jump
next,
the gun.
yeah, next year
apologize.
that would be next year. So nobody would be traveling anywhere. But then as we progress, and again, this is all in the discussion stages, but as we progress, we'd be looking to say that if you chose that, if you had a desire to go into business and looking to really expand the entrepreneurship side of things, then you would have to choose to go to Lyman Hall. We're not going to be busing students back and forth. But again, this is just a matter of discussion at this point. But we do need to start thinking in that direction, and that's where we need to have a larger conversation. We have great success with our CNA program at Sheehan, but again, we're busing students middle of the day. Probably doesn't make the most sense to continue to do that. However, that program doesn't start until a student is already matriculated into their high school, meaning that it doesn't start until their junior and senior year. So we can't say, unless we're going to build a full medical careers pathway, which we presently don't have, we can't force a child to enroll in Sheehan if they're not going to start the courses until junior year.
So I guess, sorry to cut
But
you
I don't
off.
want to have, could I just say something?
yeah.
I really don't want to have this conversation
Okay.
right now because, to be honest, it's not for me to have. It's for the community to discuss and for the teachers and administrators. So I'm just saying that in terms of your reference about meeting with the union about contracts and stuff like that, we could have conversation. We've done that in the past. It is a negotiated item. It is something that we negotiate and we approve in good faith. So I mean, we could entertain that conversation, but I think the bigger conversation is really some systemic discussion. And that's all I'm saying. And I really don't think tonight is the night to discuss the systemic discussion because it's not about me. It's about the system. And there needs to be a lot more voices in this conversation. So I would just respectfully just say that that would be it for that part, just from my perspective. I mean, you could ask questions, I'll try to answer, but I don't have the answers because nothing's been developed.
Okay, I will have questions though.
Oh, of
'cause I
course.
just so you know where it's coming
Yeah,
from.
no, sure.
To have an 8th grader decide coming into high school that, oh, this is what I want to do.
Many schools in the state and the country do it. So I think our children in Wallingford, we would have to talk about it and it had to be a Wallingford decision. But again, we can't, like you agree, we can't continue to do everything we want to do.
That's true.
So at some point, we have to have those difficult conversations. And maybe the conversation goes in a different direction. Maybe people don't want to touch that and they want to go with a different part of the organization. But we have to have those conversations because it's difficult if we're going to continue to be committed to 2 high schools, which it sounds like we are, then we can't, it's costly. It's very costly. I don't think there's a board member or a citizen in the town would disagree with that. But it's costly to build a new high school too, because neither one of the 2 present high schools would be able to meet the needs of all of our students because of the capacity, the ADA compliant issues, all of the tremendous amount of work that needs to be done on both schools in order to make them truly up to speed. So we have to do an analysis. But I hear what you're saying. But there are students, who do it. The magnet schools attract students all the time. And I'm not saying that necessarily has to be the outcome, but I think we have to think that creatively on this topic because it's not going to get better. We all know that the budget is not going to get better. Next year is probably going to be worse than this year. So we just need to be very, very strategic. And at the core of everything we do, we have to make sure that we're providing the best educational opportunities for students.
And I just want to say, with respect to teacher salaries and the fact they go up every year, yeah, they do. We have to also remember that we want to stay competitive with other districts, and we want to be able to bring in the best quality teachers here to Wallingford. We're not going to be able to do that if we're not willing to pay them.
So, and I agree with you on the competitiveness statement, but I don't necessarily believe that the only factor that we have to take into account for that is salary. I believe that it's been proven in other countries and in other states that there are different ways to attract teachers based on things like climate and other opportunities that are available. And we do offer a lot of great opportunities for our teachers. But I'm thinking that maybe what we need to do is start looking into some of those alternatives, because what happens is if you increase the salary every year, then even for that new incoming person, it just keeps growing. It never stops. And so at some point we have to say, is this really a sustainable model? Or maybe we should start looking in another direction and see what else can attract teachers.
I agree, but I think we do have an already attractive package for our teachers. I think we've heard it time and again when teachers come here and are interviewed, that one of the things they say is they've heard such great things about our programs and our the direction the district is going in. These are all the things that bring people to us. So it's not just the salary that's bringing them, but let's face it, it's the salary that puts the food on the table.
And they should be paid, and I'm not saying that I'm all for a livable wage and appreciation through monetary means. But again, sustainability and how can we do what we're doing, and if not more, in a different way. That's all.
And one of the things that does bear saying is that this board has done an exceptional job of really thinking strategically in terms of all of the other unions that they negotiate with as well. So many of the contracts that we've negotiated in the past year, 2 years, are really just 2 years in duration, which is not typical. This is something new that this board in particular has negotiated. And so a lot of our contracts will be coming up anyway. I believe, though I don't have it in front of me, I think the teachers might have been a 3-year.
It was
Yeah, so the teachers is a 3-year, and it's just starting this coming year. But this board also does deserve credit in the fact that our negotiated salary increases have all been below what the state average has been.
Yes.
And so you've already been addressing that through the very process of negotiations. So when we've already done such a good job with that, and like I said, that goes to those of you who are on every single negotiation I have, it's hard to pull it down even more. But you've been mindful of that right out of the gate in every step of the negotiations process that we've had. So you've been helpful in that respect already.
Yeah, you also have, excuse me, the, arbitration working in the shadows too. So,
Yeah.
You can negotiate, good faith, but, and explain this, but if the union says, well, we want, right, a certain percentage, and they go to arbitration.
I understand that whole
yeah.
process, and I'm not trying to start an argument about
No.
this or say that we shouldn't be paying teachers. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that we need to look at maybe what some other countries are doing, some other states are doing, and see if, because everybody's in a fiscal crunch, and they're coming up with ways, and I think that it's
Well,
something
I-
worth
yeah.
conversing with teachers about.
Well, I think Shauna, I just would like to clarify, just to say something as superintendent. because it's something that resonated with me for the last month as I see my colleagues across the state put out their budgets and what they're going to do to get to their budget that they need to because of the reductions. I think what I present to you tonight is amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm not taking credit for it, but what our board is able to do and what our administrators are able to do, we are not cutting a single service to a student that doesn't need to be cut because we're down in enrollment. I mean, I can't keep people just to keep people. That just doesn't work. And I know nobody's
yeah.
suggesting that, but there are districts that are threatening to cut sports programs, to raise prices, to cut, to cut full day kindergarten, to cut all those things. We're not,
World
nothing
language.
on this list. I mean, just this, there's a salary adjustment. We have a reduction in salary, so we're saving $15,000 there. Non-certified severance. A lot of our clerical staff put in for retirement, but they choose not to, so we have a savings there of about $80,000. School allocations, we're not going to be able to raise the allocations this year. But again, we can make do. We'll do well with that. We do have a couple of things. We have a mentor program that we offer a donation of $10,000 to the Boys and Girls Club, and to be honest, we haven't seen the return on that investment over the last several years, so we're not going to be moving forward with that. The World Languages Summer Program, I have to give Carrie Latour full credit for this. She was going through it, and this is a program that all of our summer programs are usually pay to participate, and they don't cost the district anything. For some reason, this program has kind of gone under the radar, not for any bad things, but it's free of charge. So we still want to offer the program, but we're going to have students pay to cover the cost. So we don't want to get rid of the program, but we do believe they need to take on the cost of that.
And what are we talking about? Not to, I don't know if you know this off the top of your head.
The
What are we?
cost per child, we
rough-
haven't figured
yeah.
that one out.
No worries. No, I'm,
And
don't
then
worry.
the last part is the maintenance budget. We are able to reduce it 60,000. We do have a couple of increases, which we wanted to make sure that we're cutting our clerical time over the summer, reducing it, reducing our clerical support, as you know, but we need to have schools still open. So this is just to cover those extra hours. And then the para-educators, you know that we've been really trying to increase our support in pre-K. So again, we're still $163,000 away from a balanced budget, but I can assure you that we're working in directions that are not going to impact programming. I feel very confident we could get there. I wouldn't have put this out this early in the process. This is the first time I've ever done this as superintendent, but I also knowing the stress that everybody is living under with the state budget, I didn't want to contribute to that stress to the town and to our staff, and having staff members worry about whether or not they're going to have a job or not have a job, and what is the impact and how many, and are we canceling programs. I just didn't want to do that to people. And again, that's just my leadership style, and if that's for better or for worse, that's what you hired. But I just feel that next year is probably going to be more challenging, so we do have to have those other conversations. But I didn't want to borrow a problem we don't have today. And it's not saying that I wanted the town council to cut us more, because believe me, this is going to be painful enough. But I also don't want to unnecessarily alarm people, and I do think it's important that we all take pride as a school district, our teachers, our administrators, you as board members, our parents, that we aren't in a place like other districts are that are really scrambling to come up with the money to make ends meet, and they are going to decimate programs. And that's one thing we've always committed ourselves to, is to try to keep and sustain services. So I wanted to share this evening. I'd like to get your permission to include this in my presentation to town council, so that because they always ask, how are you going to make ends meet? How are you going to get there? And then I'm like, well, we have to talk about it. I think that's going to wear thin this year because there's so much stress over the budget at the state. And they're not going to know anything, I believe, next week, appropriations at the state, the last week of April, the 28th, I think they have to make recommendations. So there's not going to be anything available, and we're going to already have talked to them. So I just don't want to poke the bear, and I just want to be transparent. So that's why I brought it forth to you all tonight.
Amanda?
I just wanted to say, I'm a little disappointed by some of these because you know how I feel.
Well, there's a
about
couple of things
Copeland.
I got to say. I want to go back to Family Resource Center. Tony Loomis and I had the pleasure of speaking last Thursday at the state. There was a committee on attendance and discipline and wellness, and we were invited to talk about how we're doing our coordinated efforts as a district. And Nancy Weinman is the chair of this committee, the lieutenant governor. And she was very impressed. But one of the gentlemen there, you never know who's going to be in the room. His wife runs the Family Resource Centers for the state of Connecticut. So we've already been in contact. And Shauna and I already had an idea, and we have everybody on board. So we're going to be able to probably have Family Resource Centers like we want for no cost to the district next year. So we're working on that. The other thing is the another passionate one that we have is the Junior Bridge Academy.
Yeah, I was worried about that
Yeah.
one.
We're gonna make that. We're gonna figure that one out. So we're gonna figure that out for the 5th graders going into 6th grade, having that smooth transition like we do for the 9th graders going into 10th, or excuse me, 8th graders going into 9th grade. We're gonna meet with the middle school administration tomorrow. We're gonna start planning how many students are we talking about, what can we get for donations, what can we get for volunteers. So I think we're gonna be able to do something there, maybe not as extravagant as we had hoped, but at least something to at least begin the process and showing how that would be impactful for students. The responsive classroom materials, the things that potentially are tangible items that we could purchase that don't go bad, we could use some unencumbered funds for
Right,
this year.
right.
So we think that I know those were 3 real hot button issues. Obviously, we'll be coming back for Chromebook replacements through the unencumbered funds. Karen has already sent in her formal letter of a request. So that will be, part of that. But I think that we're trying to, none of these items go on here arbitrarily. I think, Carrie, as a new member of our central office team, probably has a different level of understanding of how we really dig deep into these. And I have to say, Ed, Mark, Rob, Cindy, of course, Melissa Isles, who's not here, Karen, Carrie, have just been a great team to work with on this. And Ed has been phenomenal with his just quick response to every question about budget, which is nice. And having somebody double check me is always nice to have. So.
What I also want to say is I just appreciate the time that went into this, and I think it will be very interesting to see what comes from kind of like the more unified like policies or whatever it may be between the 2 high schools, because I think potentially that could have some cost efficiencies, because even hearing about the policy being different on the 2 sides, I had no idea that. So there could be many other things that there might be discrepancies on, which, if you kind of comb through that, there might be things that like Lyman Hall or Sheehan might be doing that might save the other side money and vice versa.
Absolutely.
So,
And I think that the other thing that we're going paperless with our purchase order system starting in the fall or July 1st for central office. Once it goes to town hall, we still have the paper process that we have to follow. So there is going to be, we don't know the exact savings of time and cost there, but we know there's going to be some savings, bless you, true. And so we'll need to figure that out. But then we also have the Kaizen events for each of the levels, dealing with other efficiencies for time and resources. And then really moving that whole concept down to the building level, which is a great way to involve the whole building community in looking at how can we do things more effectively for students and for staff and for families. So I think we're on the right path, and I just don't want to lose sight of that because this could look a lot worse. And again, I think that that's a credit to everybody working together, but it could look a lot worse. And who knows, maybe next year it will. But again, I don't want to borrow problems I don't have today.
I also, one last thing. I also think maybe involving like students too, because I know we do the capstone projects and we have some really innovative youth. I know, when I was in high school, I had various little businesses like while I was in high school. They never really amounted to anything, but you never know if there's like one great idea that could, end up being profitable in some way, or I don't know. There's always innovative ideas that
Absolutely.
don't want to go unnoticed.
Absolutely.
Whether it's the student, a teacher, whoever,
Well, and that's really where the value of the bringing the lean to the school level, giving the teachers and the staff a voice on a voluntary basis who wants to be part of the lean team just to think this way. There are some people who just naturally wake up in the morning and are ready to do this and kind of dissect problems and look at them from different angles. Well, let's use that as a strength of theirs and not mandate it, but let's use those people's strengths to say, okay, how can we do something differently? What is, just the purchase order I shared with all of you, just actually seeing it physically, how it had to go from one place to another was just crazy. I mean, it was absolutely nuts. So, it was like, okay, this is like the definition of insanity. So I'm sure there's things at each school that every teacher or paraeducator or clerical member could come up with and say, why are we doing it this way? And again, the outcome, the effectiveness might not be immediate in terms of being realized, but it will happen. But again, my goal tonight was just to share this with you, not to alarm anybody, but just to get your permission to include this in the presentation to the town council so that they knew we had a direction.
Yep.
Just before Roxanne has a point to make, but I just want to say that last year you did this, and it was amazing, and I think that it should go not unrecognized. You should be acknowledged for the amount of work and time you put in, and I know it was your whole staff.
It's everybody together.
But I know that other places are horrible, and this really truly is a credit to the great team we have both at central office and across the board throughout the district. And so it is appreciated, and thank you for the time and energy you guys are all putting into it, because it makes a difference to all of our students.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah, really, I just wanted to echo that same sentiment, Shauna. You said it perfectly. The other piece I want to make the point is, as somebody that's up there with Dr. Menzo on the stage, I fully support the notion of providing this to the community. It's a working document, and obviously we still have a little work to go, 164,000 almost, so that's significant, and it's not a little bit of work, but I appreciate obviously the hard work, as Shauna indicated, but to have it done this early, again, it just saves so much anxiety for everybody, and for, you don't need to go through that. The town council doesn't need to go through that. None of us do. We don't. So, the work you put in such a quick fashion is really the admirable piece. You guys did this. I can't imagine how many hours you guys spent doing it, but it it looks simple, and I know it wasn't. So thank you for that. And again, the quickness that you got to this point. So I think it will quelch a lot of fears and concerns for staff and families about how we're going to make up this deficit. So, I mean, we still do have work to do, but I can totally support this notion of bringing this to town hall this week and next week, for that matter.
Yeah, and are we talking about putting this on the website as well?
Yeah, what I'm going to do is I want to look at this, make sure that I could have this accompanied with some narrative, send it out to staff and families as an email blast, and then put it also on the website with an accompanying little statement so that people better understand it.
Do you think it would be beneficial to have, and I don't know how we would set it up, but a drops for comments that could go to someone, you or anybody else? I don't know.
We've done the email. We've done an email in the past. We could look into that, where people could, and we also did the survey, the budget survey this year.
Yeah.
So we could definitely look into that.
You never know where an idea might come from. Some people really look at our budget.
Yes, that's very true.
Did you have something to say?
No.
Oh, okay.
Nope.
Anyone else? Comments, statements? No? Okay. Consensus? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, you could take consensus on that, and I just want to make one last comment.
Okay, so consensus on this document in front of us going to town council and being posted for the public?
Yes.
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 Just a couple of last things that I just wanted to tidy up. I know that we are on video, and we go on YouTube now, our meetings, our committee meetings, not just budget, but also our instructional. The reason for that, I just want to say, is that, first of all, we had the technology that was granted to us through Frontier Communications. Also, you'll notice there is not a clerical staff member here tonight, so we're not paying overtime. What we're doing is we're having the videos being watched during the school day by our staff that's working on the regular hours. They're then recording the minutes from watching the video and listening to the audio, and we're not paying the overtime. We're not having those additional costs. Now, at certain meetings where they're longer, yes, we will have somebody here, so it's not going to be definitive that not at any meetings there will be a clerical staff member, but at most meetings there won't, because we're trying to be more efficient in our process since we have the technology. So it does save us a little extra money that we don't have to take from some other place. So I just wanted to clarify that. I also did want to say that we did have our instructional committee meeting the week before the vacation. And I know there was a lot of discussion about an opportunity to talk to Sheen administration. That has occurred. We have had a conversation. We are meeting with them again on the 24th. And then we'll report back to the board. But I do want to say, and I think it went without being said that evening, and I do apologize for this in a way, in that I don't want, and I don't think it was the intent of any parent, and it certainly wasn't our intent as administration, and I believe I can speak for Cindy and Carrie when I say this, that we were trying to paint everyone at Sheehan High School with one brushstroke. There's incredible things that go on daily at Sheehan High School in every classroom. And we know that there are also opportunities for growth on the part of everyone, even myself included. We all need to grow. So we really I just want to make that clear that, and I don't believe that was the sense of the board either, but I think that we do want to cultivate conversation and have people feel free and willing and able and respected to come and share their ideas, be it a parent, a student. We've had students in the past share this year, be it a teacher. We've had teachers, we've had paraeducators, we've had food services people. These are open meetings. They're not closed parties, so people can come and share their ideas. But again, I didn't want, because I know the hardworking people that are at Sheehan High School, that anyone left, and I didn't want anybody to believe or think that there aren't great things going on there. There are tremendous things going on there. There are students who are receiving great honors, as was evidenced in the newspaper recently of the scholar athletes. There are great things going there. So, we all have opportunities for growth. I know, as I said, I personally do. I'm sure there's not a person among us that doesn't, and that's what we'll work together, because we're committed to having everyone learn together, not just the students, but also the adults. We all have opportunities for that. So I just wanted to say that, and I kind of wanted to own a little bit of the fact that I don't think that was evident in that conversation at all, and I didn't want people to think that they weren't respected and valued for the work that they try to accomplish each day.
Thank you. If that's all, this
Yep.
meeting is adjourned.